Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
March 2024. Have you been to any of the 35 African countries where EcoBank has presence? There are many. 35. Nigeria, they have presence.
Yes, Abuja.
Nairobi, Kenya, they have presence.
Yes.
Okay, and many others.
Many others.
And 32 others in Africa.
Or 33.
Why is it important?
Because one platform where you're plugged in, no matter where you start. So let's say you start off in Abuja and then you make a trip to Nairobi. It doesn't mean you have to shut down your accounts, that you just continue and you plug and play as you normally would. And EcoBank realizes the importance of this and says, you know what? So just because your life is moving around, your bank account doesn't need to. And you can continue with your payments wherever you go as though you never left. And it's obviously a better way to do to do business. Actually, it is a better way to do Africa. And because it's a better way, it's a better Africa. That's
it. And it's the future of the continent. Have you logged on to plan.icealion.co.ke? That's plan.icealion.co. That's a website. Please, if you're thinking I'm talking about you an X handle, no. Plan.icealion.co.ke. It's a website. It's a microsite by ICALion where they're saying, we are changing the way we are thinking and doing business. For a long time, the insurance business in this country has been, we have a product, come fit into this product. Now they're saying, no. You have a plan. Let us come and fit into your plan and help you realize your dreams. So plan.icealion.co.ke is where you go and have a conversation with them. They have a very robust chatbot, so it'll not just be a bot talking. It's a human being on the other end. They will chat with you. They'll have a conversation with you. You can call them, you can talk. They can even invite themselves or invite you to their place, and you have a conversation. It's important. What's your plan? ICALion walks with you. Our next conversation is going to be, what's your plan? Is your plan to study abroad? Is Canada among those countries that are in your plan? Is Canada the only country in your plan? Then we have got the solution for you, because we are going to talk about York University and why you should study in Canada. JJ McMurtry is Dean, Faculty of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies at the York University, and Bisi Alawudi is the Regional Recruitment Manager for Africa for York University. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the hot seat of Kenya's biggest conversation. Welcome to the Situation Room. Now, we're going to have a conversation about studying in Canada and why York University should be the one that's top on the list, what it offers. Also, why studying in Canada would be a big thing. I know many people now are thinking about just moving to Canada, moving out of here, go to Canada, go to study, go to work, go to live in Canada. You'll tell us a lot more about it. But to welcome you to the conversation, this gentleman called CT Muga has the day's proverb. Every week, CT goes to one African country. He picks proverbs from that country. He gives us a proverb a day. This week, he's been in the kingdom of Swatini. And the king is called King Swati.
Yes. Well, it's interesting. So are the people.
And, and how many queens are there?
Let me say, it's a dynamic growing number.
Okay.
That is the best way of putting it.
It's a fluid number.
It's a fluid number.
Okay.
Yes.
Sour.
Is that King Solomon?
Such a thing.
Well, I think it's heading in that direction, yes. The day's proverb. A rich widow weeps with one eye and laughs with the other.
A rich widow weeps with one eye and laughs with the other. BC, I'm going to start with you. It's an African proverb. So let's see. What's your interpretation of this one?
I think the widow is able to understand, is mourning the loss of the husband, but at the same time, she's laughing, thinking that she's made a lot of wealth from that and she would have a good life afterwards.
JJ, what do you think?
That was a dangerous answer. I think it's mourning the husband, but also looking forward to the rest of her life with joy.
So is this a positive proverb? Is it a mockery proverb? What do you think the proverb is telling us, JJ?
Be careful of your wife. No.
Beware who you marry.
Well, that is a man interpreting the proverb. For
That's
you.
it.
Comes in directly. Bisi, what do you think they're telling us?
The life is the double-edged sword. There's some things that happen that will mean bad, and there are the flip corner of it. There's a good side to it also.
Good one. I'm sure you agree, JJ.
Of course.
Okay. This time we're going to play it safe.
That's right.
York University. Introduce us to York University.
York University is Canada's third largest institution. It has over 50,000 students. It's in Canada's most diverse city, which is Toronto, and it has every kind of program you could possibly imagine, except for medicine. And we're actually in the process of applying to build a medical school. So everything from engineering to poetry to accounting, business, we do it all at York University, and a very strong research profile as well.
What's the heritage of this university?
It was founded in 1956, I think, although don't quote me on that. And it was a new university that was built to address the growing population in Canada and the post-war world, but also to address where people thought Toronto, the city that it's located in, was growing. And now actually York University is in the center of what we call the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area. So most of the new population is in the north of the city, and York University is smack dab in the middle of it. So it was supposed to, I think the president says, have a maximum of 15 to 20,000 students. And of course, we have far exceeded that, which shows the growth in the Canadian economy and the Canadian society.
How many students did you say?
Over 50,000.
Over 50,000 students.
Yes.
All of them within Toronto.
Yes. Yes. They're all living in this giant city. of
No
metropolis.
campuses outside of Toronto.
No, there's a new Markham campus that has just been built. There's a campus in downtown Toronto called the Glendon campus, where you can study in French and English. And we also have two smaller campuses, one in Costa Rica and one in Hyderabad, India.
Many programs, but not medicine.
Not medicine now. We have a faculty of health, which can do all the pre-med that you would desire, as well as psychology and other medical programs. But we are in the process, as I said, of negotiating with the government to build a medical school in Toronto.
Was this deliberate?
Deliberate to not have a medical school?
Yes.
No, it's always been in the plan of the university, actually. But medical schools are hard to come by and very expensive, and they're controlled by the government. So there's obviously a large medical school at the University of Toronto, and a new one at TMU, Toronto Metropolitan University, and we want to be the third. We've always been involved in the health sector. For example, I have a very strong nursing program. My own faculty has a number of programs in health. Many people go on to do health-related work, but just not doctors.
Is there demand for doctors?
In Canada and around the world, for sure there is demand, but there's also significant demand for the supports that support doctors. I have two doctors in my family. They can't survive without the nursing and the supports that come around medicine. Medicine's obviously a very complex beast, and in Canada at least, a lot of medicine has gone into things like we have Telehealth Ontario, for example, where you call in and speak to a registered professional. We have midwives, we have all sorts of supports surrounding the medical system.
So, I mean, it's a large university in terms of numbers, 50,000, but still wanting to spread its arms around the world. Why?
Well, it's central to our fundamental mandate to be international. That's why part of the reason why we're here today. We have a huge number of international students in my faculty, about 4,000 alone, and we were an early adopter of this international vision for a university where we look at our locality, we look at our province, we look at our nation, but we also look at the world in our research and our teaching. But we also think it's of huge value for all students to experience a diverse and multicultural group of people as they go through and educate themselves.
So for you, BC, as you think about it, and so if somebody was considering their university options, whether it was an undergraduate or at a graduate level or even further, why would they want to come to York?
York is a very diverse university, and central point of our location being in Toronto, we provide support for international students. We have a student body of over 10,000 international students, and which is very diverse. And the African community in Toronto, it's very strong. And York being the third largest institution, university in Canada, we continuously find how to support international students, not only through their learning in classroom, but the extracurricular activities that they get to embrace through, engagement in the community, support for them in terms of social support, and helping students to embrace the culture and the diversity that exists in Canada.
When did it, how do I put it? When did it become necessary for York University to decide that they probably need to talk to people outside Canada to take an interest in the university?
I think it started very early on. It's kind of in the DNA. We have always had researchers who have been involved internationally and who have engaged, and with very strong focus on Africa. Even when I was an undergraduate working at the University of Guelph, I did my undergraduate in African history, and the one place I wanted to continue that work was York University because it had that focus already. Many of our researchers have large grants looking at all areas of the world, but also significantly inside of Africa. So I would argue it's been built into the very DNA of York University from the inception. Many of the first professors that came to York University were coming from other places around the world, including the United States, Europe, but also internationally. So it's because it's a new university relatively, it has that focus and that multiculturalism built into.
Does it have, for instance, like now, would you say you know of current research programs that are being run on the continent of the city?
Yes, there's a number of international, what we call partnership grants. We just had a recent one, which is looking at Southern Africa specifically, partnering up in multiple countries, looking at the various economic and political situations in the region. And that has been a long tradition for our researchers. Even before coming here, I was meeting with my own faculty of 12 members who just volunteered, put up their hand and said, "You're going to Africa, can you please meet with this university, that university? We're going to Nigeria and Ghana after this." And we're really here to establish these relationships and firm them up when they haven't been established before.
You mentioned diversity. Why is it important? Why is it a consideration when you're thinking of the population that you would like within your university?
Well, for me personally, it's very important because the experience of being able to engage with other cultures, other ideas, is really important in our society and in our world going forward. And unless you can have real meaningful engagement with other cultures, I think you become a very limited citizen and a limited citizen of the world. And so having that understanding is critical. And inside of Toronto, it's amazing. It's like I said before, it's one of the most multicultural cities in the world. I was meeting with some alumni last night, and they said the one thing I miss about Toronto is the diversity of food. You can have food from every single culture in the world. And I think that just enriches all of our lives and our experiences. And the world has gone global. So it's important for all of us to have those connections.
If I come, say, for instance, from a third world country, do I have an advantage if I want to apply? Not me specifically. Generically speaking, if I'm a citizen of a third world country, are there specific benefits that I would derive, like preferential treatment, if I were to apply to, say, York University? Or will I be given the same platform as everybody else?
Well, there are certain things. For example, we guarantee housing if you apply before May 1st for all international students, and that's a preferential treatment. We have all sorts of different programs to support international students. In my own faculty, we have redone our college system. So there's one college which is focused specifically on international and Indigenous communities, so that there are special spaces, rooms you can book. We have international student clubs. We have all sorts of supports for international students, including scholarships and various financial supports for those students.
I think that bleeds into what the next question was going to be, because when we consider, I mean, it really doesn't matter where you are, but when you consider a tertiary education, the cost factor comes into play.
For sure.
And so if you're leaving your country, going somewhere else, especially now, going to West, the cost is a question. So then what's worth it when it comes to how much you would essentially spend? If we're talking about Kenya, you'll be spending millions to get a 4-year education, for example, at York, isn't it? Or would it be a little bit less?
Well, in terms of support for international students, we have, like JJ mentioned, we have several scholarships available to international students. And to your question, is it really worth it to, spend all of those millions? And I'm going to defer to myself. I moved to Canada as an international student 11 years ago, and over the years, I've been able to build a cultural base that has helped me see the world in a very diverse perspective. And the investment on myself through education and spending those millions over the year has been paid it off for me, and the opportunities I've been able to, the experiences I've been able to gather, the people I've been able to meet, the connection I've been able to establish, and more importantly, the expansion of my mind is being able to see diverse perspective. You're sitting in a classroom just like your very diverse student body from all over the world. That is my passport of traveling to Costa Rica, my passport of traveling to India, my passport of traveling to Ethiopia, and not just sitting in the four walls of my own country, but being able to be in a classroom where I'm able to embrace diverse perspective and learn from different people, and even embrace their food, their culture. And that investment, I believe, is very worth it. And York provides support for international students through various scholarship programs that helps to support students. And not only that, I'm a very proud Canadian at this point, and it's the opportunity that Canada provides for international students to not only just study, but also work while studying. And I think no other country does it better in terms of immigration pathway for international students and how it supports them.
Just going on to that again, recently we are seeing more and more people who are seeking to study abroad. For a long time, it's been studying. You go study in India, go study in the UK, in Europe. We are seeing go study in the USA, in Australia, in Canada. A couple of months back, we had a conversation with a gentleman called Shane Premji, who I'm sure is your partner. He works with Cradle. And he was telling us about studying in Canada specifically. He had studied in Canada himself. And he told us about his experience there. And we kept asking the question, so why Canada? Why not Australia? Why not Finland? Why not the UK? Why not India? Why not China? What would you say, JJ? And then you'll come and tell us your personal experience. JJ, why Canada?
Well, I'm a proud Canadian, so I'm obviously biased, but I've traveled to many of those other countries, and I think there's a few things that separate Canada. One is that it's like many countries, but I would argue it's the best in the world, has a very rich support system for students, for its citizens. Healthcare, quality of life, excellent transportation, access to a whole wide variety of cultures and different experiences. Secondly, I think that the Canadian education system, and The Economist and others have argued this, is one of, if not the best in the world because of its balance, its stability, and its international focus. Third, I think that the really important thing about Canada, and BC has already mentioned this, is that pathway, if that's of interest to students, both to immigration but also to be working immediately. And at York University, we offer our students the ability to work right off the get-go, on campus, off campus. We have career centers to help them integrate into society. And so we've taken at the university level a very measured approach to international students with an eye towards what are their ambitions. Are their ambitions to return home? Are their ambitions to stay? Are their ambitions professional? We have excellent accreditation recognized across the world. So I would say that whole package means that Canada is, in my opinion, the most desirous location for students to go to.
Bissy, take us through your journey 11 years ago. How did you end up at York University? Where from?
I moved from Nigeria, and I'll start off with a joke I read online recently that if you live in Canada, you have the opportunity to tour different cities of the world without traveling there. So what do I mean? In Canada, Ontario specifically, there is London, there is Adelaide, there is Paris also. So there's also Sydney. So you could also go to all of these places and say to yourself, I've been to these locations before. For me, Canada, my journey in Canada has been very awesome in terms of being able to embrace a cultural difference and meet people.
How did you make the decision to go there? How did you find out about York University? Were you always dreaming to go and study abroad? I want that journey of the 11 years ago. How you ended up there.
Okay, so when I started the journey for me, so I initially didn't apply to York when I moved to Canada. I went to a college, but I ended up working at York, and also interestingly, I've done some programs also there. So when the journey started for me, I wanted to embrace learning outside of my country. I wanted to be able to see the world from a different perspective. And Canada was of much interest to me, knowing fully well about the diversity that exists there. And back then, the media was not very pleasant about things going on in the other side of the border. And given that I've lived my life in a huge metropolitan city all of my life, being Lagos State, I thought I wanted a city that would help me embrace that, but in a much, subtle and more welcoming way. And
A slower city than Lagos.
yeah, so and Canada was it for me, and getting into Canada and see how people embraced and were curious about where I'm from, not just like, okay, we don't want to see you or hear from you, but we want to learn from you. We want to get your perspective to understand, what you're about, so that we could embrace the learning from your end. And that was very important, because I see people humble enough to ask questions, and they're curious to learn about where you're from, and not be standoffish about their perspectives.
And it's an important. We'll continue this conversation shortly. Let's take a break. As we are talking about studying in Canada and the importance of it, we are joined by two gentlemen. One is JJ McMurtry. He is the Dean, Faculty of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies from York University, and Bisi Alawode. He is the Regional Recruitment Manager for Africa for York University. We are having a conversation about studying in Canada, why it's important, and then you'll tell us the pathway to, for example, applying to York University, what you can study at York University, the scholarship programs available for York University, and then even that working. We like working. We don't just like sitting around and just studying for nothing. We like to make a buck, or 2 or 10. We'll be back shortly. It's 8:30.
Are you ready to make your mark in the world? To showcase your business, event, or special announcement in a way that grabs attention? Well, you can now rest easy with the Standard Group self-service platform, allowing you to book ad space in the Standard newspaper hassle-free. So say hello to your brand's visibility courtesy of Standard Ad Center, which is self-service friendly, easier, faster, and smarter. Book your ad in the Standard newspaper from the comfort of your home, office, or wherever you are. Because it really is as easy as visiting ads.standardmedia.co.ke/ads to follow the prompts and make it count for your business. A product of Standard Group PLC.
Are you okay?
I think I'm having an allergic reaction from something I ate.
Allergic reaction? But I specifically said no nuts. MJ, didn't I tell you that? You did.
Oh, no.
I said no nuts. Let me see that. Look. The sauce has nuts.
What?
MJ, oh no, what have you done?
Mom. I thought there wasn't any.
Yes, I told them that. I told them not to put nuts.
Huh?
I'm pretty sure.
Are you aspiring to own and invest in the real estate landscape? This Sunday, the property pick of the week explores an array of cherry-picked properties available in the market. Plus a feature on upscale turnkey budget solution on how to turn an idle plot into a dream home on a great budget, timelines, and stress-free. The decorating corner is where we'll be sharing tips on adding character to your home. Join me this Sunday for all this and so much more, only on The Property Show. As always, there is something for everyone.
Naongeanga hivyo.
Kukiaka moto mtaliaje huko kwenyu?
Fire.
Yaani na mabeshe zake wamepangiwa hapo kibonge cha Beyonce. Na Rihanna hapo na Shakira angemchagua nani?
Angechagua nani kama si mimi?
Mami naona leo sijui utalala wapi alisema Rihanna.
Sasa unachagua aje mwingine?
#the Situation Room.
Chilled Spice.
Our conversation continues with JJ McMurtry, who's a Dean, Faculty of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies at York University, and Bisi Alawode, the Regional Recruitment Manager for Africa at York University. Among the students who've studied there, Dr. Miguna, and I'm just going to quote from a tweet of where he says he has studied: University of Nairobi, Kenya; University of Toronto, Canada; York University, Canada. And he says, I was a top student at each one of those universities. JJ, how many Kenyan students do you have in your faculty at present?
Well, that's an excellent question. I know that Kenya is one of our top three African countries to come in. Nigeria and Ghana be the others. I think around 50 is my go by memory, and we do look country by country at all the students that come, and we have students from over 100 countries inside of my faculty. So
Kenya is one of the top three.
From Africa.
From Africa.
Obviously, India and China are major providers of students to us, but also those three African countries.
So Kenyan students are a good source for you. Kenyans are a good source for your students, right?
Yes.
Why Kenyan students?
I think
what would you say you'd be interested in having more and more students coming from Kenya joining York?
Well, I think overall we're interested in, as the world changes, having students come from a variety of different places. In Africa specifically, I think will be a continent with many countries who will be leading the way over the next 50 to 100 years. The demographic growth is here, the development is here, and as China and India wind themselves down demographically, Africa is actually a source of youth and youthfulness going forward. So one of the things that attracts us to Kenya is its stability, is its excellent education system, and the interest of its students to have that worldwide experience. They tend to be quite cosmopolitan and aware of world issues and engaged, and also in a variety of different programs. Not just in my faculty, but in the sciences and STEM, but also in politics and the arts. And I think that's really important to have a diversity of interests coming from a particular country, which is important.
It's interesting to hear that, York University, among others, is, reaching out and saying, come. But then it would seem as though immigration policy from Canada, from a government perspective, is saying, don't come. And it's also saying, don't come with your families. So is there misinformation? Is there miscommunication about what's going on with that?
I don't think so. I think that one of the things that universities have been doing for a very long time, for decades, is advocating. And I think one of the things, governments are often very slow and inward looking. And I think that I know our president, as well as other presidents of universities, are advocating for a better understanding of the world as a whole, and also immigration policies that reflect that reality. And so for us, we want to not just be here today for today's students. I would argue, and before COVID, I was arguing as a dean, we should be more present in Africa. It's a strategic choice, and we need to be present here long after BC and I are not in these positions as an institution and as a country. Because I think that we've always had long-standing relationships with Africa as Canadians, and I think we need to build and strengthen those relationships.
So how would it work then? Because in order for me to come to York tomorrow, the government is going to have to let me into the country, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And if it would seem as though it's a through pass, if I apply and my grades, if I apply to come and do a PhD or a master's, for example, and my grades top notch, this is the kind of person that we want here, and for whatever reason I'm denied by, or are we saying that so long as I'm accepted at York, that then the immigration process is easier by virtue of the fact that I've been accepted at school? Do you see what I mean?
I do, and it is easier, but we also at York University have hired immigration lawyers, literally full-time immigration lawyers, to advocate for our students and also our faculty members who are coming internationally, because we recognize that the bureaucracy of government, especially if you're coming from elsewhere and don't understand it. I'm a Canadian, I often don't understand the process of the government, but it is to make sure that there's advocacy and presence there. So if you apply, if you are accepted, we have a whole team of people, including in the recruitment office, but also immigration lawyers, our advisors, and we want you to be guided through those steps.
Okay.
Now, there's no guarantee. I'm not the Prime Minister of Canada, but we are actively advocating, especially on behalf of African students, because we've recognized that there's often more difficulties coming from Africa into Canada.
Sure. So BC, from a support perspective, and I think maybe this would be the overarching principle here, that there's a support system for those who are in the York, I guess then it becomes the arena by the time you start applying. What kind of support is afforded or accorded?
One of the things we have available, York International team are registered RCIC consultants, which is a registered consultant for immigration that supports international students through the application process for the visa. I should also add to what JJ said. I've been in Canada for 11 years, and one thing I've observed in my experience is that Canada continues to support the transitions of international students, and we want the best and the brightest, but also we want to ensure that the student have a good life when they come to Canada. So that is very critical when they're going through the immigration process to ensure that not only do they meet the educational academic standard, but they also have support for themselves once they get to Canada. Every country in the world, has requirement for daily living and sustenance, and that is part of what the process of going through the immigration to ensure that the students are providing the right documentation. And the York International team are there to support, to provide advice on what the visa application process would look like.
Okay.
So-
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
Do us
Finish.
plenty more questions to ask.
Continue.
Okay, so it's kind of off of the support because then it's a weather question, all right? Lagos is 33 degrees right now.
Okay.
Nairobi is
28 to
28 degrees right now. Mombasa is 34 degrees
Right.
today.
I think
Okay,
I know where this question
so
is
let's
going.
look around Africa. Generally speaking, if it's cold, and now we're looking at Limuru, Kapenguria, it will be 9 degrees and it's freezing. Okay, Canada, somebody took boiling water and poured it in the air and it froze. Just a few weeks ago, it froze. My question: how are people coping when you're asking them to move from the tropics, essentially? Okay.
To answer that question in a very short way, I'm sitting here right in front of you.
You survived.
I survived.
You're alive.
I think you adapt, and that's one of the strengths of humans. We find ways to adapt, and people have been living in this region prior to the invention of some of the things we have today in our world. And Canada continues to reinvent itself. Opportunity continues to grow. People find a way to adapt. And sometimes I think some of those things are exaggerated. JJ was still saying yesterday that this past winter, which I know has been, in my experience, one of the warmest winter that we've ever had. So over the years, we get to adapt. We get to know what to wear. Like warm winter at minus
20.
Minus 20.
But can I add one just quick thing? Is the lovely thing, and a friend of mine who also emigrated from Nigeria was saying this to me just before I left, is we have seasons. And the seasons are so in the summer, it can get up to 40 degrees. It can be very hot. In the spring, it's somewhere between 10 and 20 degrees all the time. And in the winter, it can be cold. But the experience of having those different seasons, he was saying he was taking his kids ice skating and how much he appreciated that experience. So I do think in the world of experience, it's actually a plus. Not a minus, a joke intended there.
There was a day actually, just this past winter, that we experienced the 4 seasons in a day.
Yes.
It was cold, it was warm, and it rained just in one day. So it's a cool experience.
What's the application process? Let's take us through that. First of all, the admission dates and timelines, then how early should you apply? What's that application process?
So we do encourage students to apply as early as possible. So application will open for September for next September intake, and our scholarship deadline is for February 15th. So for students who are looking to apply to scholarship, we encourage them to apply as soon as possible to the scholarship. Like JJ mentioned, for the housing, international students are guaranteed a spot in the first year as long as they apply by May 1st. So we'll provide that continuous support for international students. And in terms of the application, we expect that by April 1st, students are already turned in the application to study. So during this process, our admissions team will be working through the application and reviewing it on a case-by-case basis.
So what happens? You just submit your papers and then you get a response? For all programs, undergrad, masters, and PhD?
Yeah, so for the undergrad, I would speak specifically about once they apply and we receive all the required documentation, we would give them about 6 to 8 weeks for them to hear back from us to get a response.
Okay. No interview process?
Depending on the faculty that they're applying to, some faculty would require supplementary application. It might not be an direct interview. For example, our business faculty of business, Schulich School of Business, which is the top business school in Canada, would require an interview, video interview with a student. For some faculty, they need to submit additional documentation, like a portfolio for our faculty of arts and media. For JJ's faculty, I don't think you require any supplementary application for any program.
No, and we have the BCom program as well. So it's just a direct entry. And the one thing that I would say too is once the admissions process has ended in terms of you've applied, you've been accepted, the students are then handed over to the faculties. And we have entire teams of people that meet. We have Zoom meetings right up through to September. We are talking to you all the time about, what are you doing when you come? When are you landing? How do we support you? There's orientation, there's social things that we tie you into, colleges, experiences, clubs, introductions. We often, we have a program called The First Friend, which is that you're paired up with another international student so they can say, here's the best food on campus in my opinion, or those types of things. So it's a continual process of support.
And it's a personal process. Are you able to do this with each and every student who's put into the application, cycle?
I mean, the short answer is yes, but there's things like group advising, for example, where you'd say, oh, all 30 of you on the Zoom call are in this program, remember to do X, Y, and Z, but then you'll have a one-on-one meeting with an advisor to talk through your courses, your ambitions, your pathway through your first year. The First Friend is very personal, but there's also group meetings as well, because one of the key things that happens at university isn't just your studies, it's the social component, right?
Yeah. So immediately you get your response, say you've been accepted for a program that you've applied for. Of course, the next thing that starts is you've got now to start the immigration process. And you said that you support them through this. So what exactly do you do?
So once a student get the admission offer, they book an enrollment appointment with an enrollment advisor. That's where we hand them over to the faculty. And the faculty, they get to enroll for the courses they're going to take. Now, that's another department comes in, which is York International. They run regular webinars on application process, and you can book meetings with some of those York advisors that would advise you on what you need to do to submit your application, your visa application. And they're there to guide you, to advise you, and to provide you support, not only just before you get your visa, but even after, if you have challenges afterwards in terms of applying for your study permit or extending your study permit, York International will also support the student.
Okay, then let's sweeten the deal now. Scholarships. Start from the basic to the best.
So we do have several scholarships available. There are entrance scholarships that are available by faculties that they offer. Our largest scholarship is the President's International Scholarship of Excellence, which is a $180,000 scholarship available to 15 students. And we go through a rigorous...
Each or collective?
So each student.
Okay.
$180,000.
Okay.
And that could be a full ride scholarship. Canadian dollars, yes. So that could be a full ride scholarship depending on which program you're applying to, and students were able to access the scholarship, and they have to maintain a specific grade average for them to keep the scholarship through the years. There's also the Tentanda Via Award, which is a $40,000 scholarship for international student. The international student could also apply to that, and all of these are open to international students. We're not a university that says, our top scholarship international student cannot apply. They could apply to those scholarship and get accepted. And above and beyond that, there's still other scholarship that are available through the program. So in your second year, you're still able to apply to scholarship. And also, we did mention earlier that aside from scholarship, Canada provides support for international students, because I like talking about that a lot, because that's my personal experience. Because as an international student, you can work up to 20 hours when school is in session and up to 40 hours when school is in session, not in session. So what that means is that you not only get financial support through working, but you're also getting the social skills, the career skills that you need, so that by the time you're graduating, you already have a full resume that you can run with.
And it's important, just quickly, that those supports happen throughout the year. So we have a co-op program, where students in their third and fourth year can be placed inside of businesses as well. And it's one of the things that York University wants to get to 100% co-op programs. And my faculty, every student who applies now will have access to those co-op programs. So it's a really important work-integrated learning experience for those students.
When you talked about the humanities and the art sections that the university has, I was actually very excited.
Oh, good.
Well, I'm excited because I'm a social scientist.
Me too.
Yes, and I was reading and looking at the history of Toronto. In 2020 March, it celebrated its 86th birthday, which means 2024 it's 190.
As a city.
Yes, from the time it was formed. But even as it was being formed, there were communities who lived there. Now, my interest is this. Among the things you teach in a college are languages. How many native languages are taught in that university? That's one. Because the communities still exist. And even the name Toronto is taken from one of the communities that actually lived there. It's a very lengthy name. I was looking at it.
Haudenosaunee.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Say that again.
Haudenosaunee.
Thank you. See, I was already getting my tongue twisted around this one. Thank you so much. And the word was Toronto, meaning a meeting place.
Yes.
Now, why I ask this is, if I'm a visitor to a country, I would like to understand how that city treats its native population, the people they found there. It tells me a lot about the people of that particular city and how they would treat me as an outsider who is just now coming and visiting. So, starting with the languages, because the place they live there, they exist there. But of their heritage, how much of it is represented in an institution of higher learning, like, say, York University?
So an excellent question, and one which is very important to York University. We've just recently hired a Vice President of Equity, People and Culture, but we also have under that position an Indigenous position who leads our Indigenous initiatives. We have, I believe, 4 language programs, 3 inside of my faculty and 1 inside of Glendon College, where we're trying for the Indigenous people of that region, because there's many languages across Canada, but focusing in on those languages, that's how I know how to pronounce Haudenosaunee or Tagaranto. But we also have people in my faculty, for example, I have a special advisor on Indigenous issues who spends a significant amount of her time working on Indigenous plan, Indigenous inclusion, recruitment of Indigenous students. We have partnerships with various Indigenous communities, including the Markham campus, where we're engaged, but we also have a world language set of programs. We even have a course in Swahili. It's not a degree, but you can take a first-year course in that language, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, right across the board, Italian, everything else. But specifically, we have researchers, and we've had over the last number of years a program to focus on hiring Indigenous identified Canadians who want to teach at the university. And we've been able to hire a number of them, including a person in my faculty who got a Canada Research Chair, and his specific focus is on Indigenous languages from the region.
What do you think it is? Would you consider it important to, say, for instance, immerse undergrads in the history of, say, Toronto, in the history of the people who live there, so that even as they come in, they realize that they're coming into a city that was cosmopolitan even long before their time.
Sure. Yeah, so we have a program, and one of the things my Indigenous advisor is working on is what we call indigenizing the curriculum. And it goes back to one of the first questions that you were asking about inclusion and how does it feel to come to a place like Toronto and York University specifically. And it is really important for us that we represent both the long history of Canada, long before the colonial settling happened there, but also the current history, which is multiculturalism and inclusion. So we have a very significant focus on those issues, and we're trying to build into our curriculum, even as my advisor says all the time, is like, you should talk about Indigenous architecture.
Yes.
How were the longhouses built and why were they built for this particular community, and why were other types of architecture employed by other Indigenous peoples? So it's a long, to be honest, it's a very long arc to build that stuff in, but it's one that the university itself and my faculty and others have committed to doing.
Where are some of the folks who've left, or rather who've been through the program at whatever level at York today? What have they done after a York University education?
That's incredible. I think we have some now over 300,000 alumni around the world, and we were just last night meeting with a couple of them who are here, and it ranges from working in government to business, working in nonprofit organizations, working on issues of inclusion around the world, but also highly successful graduates who are giving back to the university because of their experiences. Sports, they just work everywhere. 300,000 is a huge number, and they're very international. So,
just to add to that, we have an event later tonight to host a student reception for students who have applied and have been admitted to York. And I sent an email out to students from Kenya who are alumni of our program, and I had tremendous responses from alumni who are doing successfully well here in Kenya. They're like, "Oh, I'm coming with my family. I want to attend this event to speak to other students. Really excited about my experience at York, and I want to share that experience." So it's really encouraging to see those numbers and to see people who are doing successfully well in their career to be part of such of an event.
How many are you admitting this year? How many are you hosting tonight?
So tonight we're expecting about 30 students to be part of this event. So hopefully all of them get to be a future Lion at York.
Right. Is it possible for one to transfer the credits from one university to York?
Yes, we do accept transfer credits. So for students, that is done after the admission process. The student has been admitted, so they'll be able to look at courses and make sure it aligns with the curriculum, because we don't want them to miss out on any important learning opportunity. So once the course curriculum aligns with the course that we're offering at York, they could get some transfer credit from that.
See, City.
When that question of the indigenous community was answered, I was now satisfied that this York University is a good place.
It's a place to go
and study. Yeah, because you see the whole experience of being in an institution of higher learning, beyond the educational material that you're supposed to imbue and internalize, there's the experience of who you socialize with and what you socialize with. Now, the history of a place, I think, would be fundamentally in someone settling in and understanding. Because if, say, you have a graduate of York University and you ask them, what was it that you liked about the university the most? They'll tell you the classes, the interaction. But when somebody understands the history, a lot of what they then experience makes a lot of sense. They can now see, this is this because of this. And so it then gives them an opportunity to decide long term, okay, yes, I've come here to study. Is this a place I'd like to live in? Is this a place I'd like to settle in? And that, for me, gives your educational experience a 360 degree. That is what someone who aspires to study in an institution of higher learning should actually get. Yes. And
post-graduation, you said you also support students post-graduation in terms of, trying to immigrate properly and start working in Canada. How do you do this?
Well, we have a number of different ways that we do it, right from the inception of a student coming, acclimatizing them, if their desire is, to the Canadian situation, but we have a career center, for example, that we start talking very early. But if you want to stay here, what does that look like? I mentioned the co-op program, but we do experiential education right from the first to the last day of the student being there, so that if their desire is to be placed in a business or institution inside of Canada to stay, those supports are there. We also encourage people to go on to graduate work as well. And I think that's a very important piece, especially in the world that we live in. We know that most of the graduates that are coming out now will have some sort of international experience. You can no longer stay in one place. But also that graduate degrees are a pathway to better careers. And so we also encourage people to come back. And as our president often says, lifelong learning is key to York University. We want to support people all the way through, so we have programs like continuing studies, which allow you to add on to your degree. You say, oh, I got my degree, but I need this particular piece. I need to know more about AI, for example. You can take short courses, certifications to continue going forward. And then, of course, we have relationships with employers, employer fairs, those types of things for students to move forward.
Brilliant. How can one get more information?
So visiting our website, yorku.ca, they can find more information on our website. And I just also wanted to mention, as part of the conversation around why York it's very supportive of African students, some of our foremost professors and faculty members are from Africa, and we've been doing a lot of research work in this region. And that, for me as a staff member at York, it's really encouraging to see how much invested York is in our African community, and seeing the investment going into some of the research work in Africa. Just like JJ mentioned here, we're going to be visiting a couple of countries in Africa. It shows how much we're very passionate about this region and supporting the growth here.
All right. So again, yorku.ca.
So YORKU.ca.
yorku.ca. Bisi Alawode, Regional Recruitment Manager for Africa, York University, and JJ McMurtry, Dean, Faculty of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
We hope that you have more and more interactions with you into the future.
Thank you.
Keep it here for more conversations. It's 9 a.m. Good morning.